"She's not coming back, is she?" she whispered at the altar. Her voice so low I might have missed it if I hadn't been standing close enough to catch the way her breath broke halfway through the sentence. I looked at her, really looked. The lace sleeve of her dress trembling ever so slightly against her arm. The bouquet, now forgotten in her hand, beginning to tilt sideways. Her eyes weren't crying. Not yet. But they were asking questions no one else in the room seemed willing to answer. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "He's not coming back." She turned toward me. Not fully, just enough for her profile to catch the light spilling through the stained glass. She blinked once and then again, as if trying to wake up. "Then stay with me," she said, the words tumbling out, unsure of their meaning, unsure of me. It wasn't a request, it wasn't romantic, it was survival, and I didn't say anything at first. I just took a breath, nodded once, and stepped closer. Close enough for her to lean, if she needed to, close enough to be a presence when everyone else was backing away slowly, pretending not to watch, pretending not to whisper. Chloe. That was her name. We had spoken only twice before, once during the rehearsal dinner, where she thanked me for carrying a box of centerpieces, and again in passing the morning of the ceremony, when she looked lost and I offered her directions to the bridal suite. That had been enough for me to know her voice, its soft, deliberate rhythm, enough to remember that she always seemed to be holding her breath, as if the world around her might collapse if she exhaled too loudly. Now in front of 200 people, I offered her my arm. She took it. The aisle we walked down was not the one she had imagined. There was no music, no applause, only the hush of awkward sympathy and the weight of eyes that didn't know whether to pity or judge. But she held her chin high, and I matched her pace, steady and unhurried, as if this had always been the plan. Outside, the air was cool, not cold, just enough to remind us we were no longer inside the illusion. The car was already parked near the side entrance. I had been told to stand by in case something went wrong, but no one had said what to do if everything fell apart. She slid into the passenger seat without a word. I started the engine and then glanced at her. "Where do you want to go?" She looked straight ahead. "Somewhere no one will find me." I nodded again. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer cliches, I just drove. The road out of the venue curved through low hills and trees still green from summer. I kept my hands at 10 and 2. She kept her silence, but I could feel her starting to breathe again, slowly, unevenly, like someone relearning a language they once knew fluently. 20 minutes later, she spoke. "I should feel humiliated." "You don't." "I feel untethered, like I've been spinning for weeks, and now someone finally let go of the string." I glanced at her briefly. "You don't have to tie yourself back up right away." She let out a soft laugh. It didn't reach her eyes. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one with 1,000 napkins printed with your name and his." "No," I said, "but I am the one who saw the way you walked out of that room. You didn't fall apart." She was quiet for a while after that. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for filling. So I let it stretch. When we finally stopped at a small overlook by the lake, empty at that hour, she opened the door and stepped out. I followed. We stood in silence, watching the water catch the wind in silver ripples. "I don't know what to do now," she said. "You don't have to decide that tonight." She turned to me then, fully this time. "Why are you being kind?" "Because you asked me to stay?" She nodded almost imperceptibly, and for the first time her shoulders dropped, not in defeat, in relief. We stayed by the lake until the wind grew colder and the silence became something else. Less of a shield, more of a companion. She didn't cry, I thought she might. But Chloe didn't strike me as someone who gave in to the spectacle of grief. Not because she was stoic, but because she had learned, probably early, that not all wounds look better when exposed. When I asked if she was ready to leave, she nodded without looking at me. I opened the passenger door, waited until she was seated, then closed it gently behind her. We didn't speak for most of the ride back. I didn't offer music. She didn't reach for her phone. The world outside the car felt far away, like we had stepped into a quiet pocket of time where nothing more could be asked of her, or of me. I took a longer route, avoiding the highway and the downtown streets where late guests might still be lingering. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, and chose not to say anything. There was comfort in the quiet, an understanding that neither of us needed to fill it with explanations. When we reached her apartment building, she hesitated. Her hand hovered over the door handle. "They're probably still inside," she said, voice tight. "My sister, my mom, maybe even some of his friends. Do you want me to walk you in?" She shook her head. "No, that'll make it worse. They'll think I'm being dramatic." "Then I'll wait here until you're ready." She didn't move. "I don't want to go up yet." I turned off the engine. "Then we stay here." She leaned back into the seat and closed her eyes. A long, silent minute passed. "I wasn't in love with him," she said. "I wanted to be. I thought if I worked hard enough at it, it would feel right eventually. That's what everyone said love is, just choosing the same person every day." I didn't interrupt. I let her unfold, slowly, like something long held in. "But he never really saw me," she continued. "I don't even think he liked me that much. I was just agreeable, the kind of woman his family would approve of, smart enough to impress, soft enough to manage. And still," I said quietly, "he left." She opened her eyes and looked at me. "You're not surprised?" "No," I said. "I'm not." There was a long pause. "You don't even know me?" "Not yet." She studied me, as if trying to decide whether that was a threat or a promise. Then she smiled. "Barely. You're strange. I get that sometimes. Why did you wait with me today? Because you shouldn't have had to walk out of that alone." She turned her face away, but not before I saw the shift in her eyes. Not relief, not yet, but recognition. Eventually, she said, "Do you think people can start over?" "I think people do it all the time, quietly, without ceremony. Just one small decision at a time." Her hands were clasped in her lap, fingers fidgeting with a loose thread from her dress. "And if I don't know what the next decision is, then let the next moment come, and decide when it does." She nodded slowly. "Will you still be here if I change my mind tomorrow?" "I'll be where I said I would be." She looked at me again, this time longer. Then, without another word, she opened the door and stepped out. I watched her walk into the building, not turning back, but just before the door closed behind her, she paused. Not a full turn, just enough. A glance over her shoulder, then she was gone. I waited a few more minutes, then drove off, the scent of roses and cold air still lingering in the passenger seat. The next morning I found her bouquet in the back seat. It had toppled sideways, petals bruised, some crushed under the weight of what the night had become. I picked it up gently, surprised by how fresh it still smelled, as if the flowers hadn't yet learned they were no longer needed. I hadn't planned to see her again so soon. I told myself I'd wait, let her reach out if she wanted to, but something about the silence felt incomplete, like a sentence left hanging. So I drove to a small florist near my building and asked for a new arrangement, same colors, same softness, nothing extravagant, just familiar. I didn't call ahead. I wouldn't have known what to say. Instead, I wrote a note on a plain white card, no signature, just 6 words, no pressure, just peace if you want it. When I got to her building, I buzzed the door without expecting an answer. To my surprise, she picked up. "Nathan." "Yeah, I brought something by." A pause. "You didn't have to." "I know." The door clicked open. Her apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles in when people have left and the walls are still recovering from their presence. She looked tired but not undone. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a sweatshirt draped over her dress from the day before. She noticed me noticing and gave a small, self-conscious shrug. "I couldn't bring myself to change yet," she said. "You don't have to explain." I handed her the bouquet. She looked at it for a long time, fingers brushing lightly over the petals. Then she read the card. Her expression didn't change much, but something in her shoulders eased. "Do you want coffee?" she asked. "If you're having some." She led me into a kitchen still cluttered with half-eaten cake and untouched appetizers. A banner that read, "Happily Ever After," hung slightly askew above the counter. She caught me glancing at it. My sister put that up while I was getting my makeup done. I didn't have the heart to take it down. We sat at the table, 2 mugs between us, steam rising into the quiet. "Were they angry?" I asked. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. Mostly confused. Some blamed him, some blamed me. My mother said I should have known better than to trust someone who never really made time for family events. Did you? I did know better, she admitted. But I thought that's what compromise looked like, that love was learning to live with doubt. I stirred my coffee slowly. And now? Now I wonder if I was loving him for the idea of what we could be, not who he actually was. We sat in silence again, the kind that asked nothing of either of us. Then she said, "Why did you really bring the flowers? I didn't like the way the old ones were left, crushed like that. It didn't feel right." She looked at me, eyes sharper now, not suspicious, just awake. "You do things like that often?" "Not often. Just when it matters." She didn't smile, but her gaze softened. "I don't know what to do with all of this," she said after a while, gesturing vaguely to the remnants of the wedding that never happened. "You don't have to decide today. Everyone keeps saying that, but they're not here. I am." Something shifted then. Not a grand realization, just the quiet settling of something real. She stood, walked to the counter, and pulled down the banner, folded it carefully, placed it in a drawer. "Do you want to stay for a little while?" she asked, without looking back. "Yeah," I said. "I can do that." The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by to return the scarf she'd left in my car. It wasn't particularly cold that day, but something about keeping it felt too intimate, like holding on to a part of her she hadn't meant to give. I buzzed her apartment and waited. No answer. I was about to leave when the front door opened and an older woman stepped out, her face pinched with tension. She didn't notice me right away, too focused on whatever argument she was clearly rehearsing under her breath. When she looked up, she startled slightly. "You're Nathan, right?" she asked. I nodded, not sure whether to confirm or deny more than that. "I'm her mother," she said, as if it explained the tightness in her voice. Before I could respond, the door behind her opened again. Chloe's voice came through, tired and firm. "Mom, I said that's enough." The woman hesitated, then gave me a quick, assessing glance before walking off, heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Chloe appeared in the doorway. She looked pale, her jaw set in that way people have when they're trying not to flinch at something invisible. She didn't greet me, just stepped aside, letting me in wordlessly. Inside, the apartment was cleaner. The remnants of the wedding had been packed away or thrown out. A neutral stillness had taken their place. She took the scarf from my hand and held it loosely, like she wasn't quite sure what it was. "She thinks I embarrassed the family," she said after a moment. "You didn't. She says people are talking, that I should have handled it privately, as if being left at the altar is something you can schedule on your calendar." I sat down in the chair by the window, the same spot I'd taken last time. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," she added. "You don't have to apologize for someone else's expectations." She sat across from me, rubbing her temple. "It's not just about him. It's about the version of me they wanted. The daughter who says yes quietly, who wears the right dress, who never makes a scene. Do you regret saying no?" "I didn't say no," she said bitterly. "He did. I was the one who showed up." "Then do you regret showing up?" She didn't answer for a while. When she finally did, her voice was quieter. "No, because standing there waiting, it made me see it for what it really was. I needed that moment. You're allowed to change the story they wrote for you." She looked at me then, her expression somewhere between challenge and wonder. "Do you really believe that?" "I do. You're not a character they get to direct." She smiled, faintly. "You talk like someone who's had to rewrite his own script. I've had a few edits." She leaned back into the couch. The room seemed to breathe with her, a subtle easing of the air. "You know what's strange?" she said. "I keep expecting to miss him, but what I miss most is the idea that I had someone." I nodded. "Sometimes loneliness feels worse when you were almost not alone." She looked down at the scarf in her lap, running her fingers over the soft fabric. "You keep showing up. I'm not here out of obligation." "I know. That's why it scares me." We sat like that for a while. No more explanations, no attempt to define what any of it meant. Just the knowledge that something fragile was being allowed to exist between us, unforced and unnamed. It started with the rain, the kind of sudden, stubborn downpour that catches you mid-step, mocking forecasts and folding plans in half. I saw her across the street, standing under the narrow awning of a bakery, arms crossed, eyes scanning for a ride that hadn't come. I pulled over without thinking. rolled the window down. Need a rescue? She hesitated only a moment before nodding. It's one of those days. The kind of day, I assumed, where umbrellas collapse, cabs vanish, and silence presses close. She climbed in, brushing wet hair from her face, and gave me a small, grateful smile. I didn't even know you were in this part of town. I wasn't, I said. I was just driving. She looked at me, skeptical and amused. You just drive around in the rain. Sometimes it's easier to move than to stay still. She didn't argue, just settled back in her seat and watched the city blur past the windows. I didn't ask where she wanted to go. I knew she didn't have a destination in mind. Sometimes presence was more important than purpose. After a few minutes, she reached into her bag and laughed, low and dry. I carried this all day, she said, holding up a tiny, folded umbrella. Didn't open it once. Completely forgot I had it. Want me to pull over so you can stand dramatically in the rain and make use of it? She laughed again, softer this time. Not today. I offered her my jacket when the car's heater started to lag behind the chill. She refused it at first, then took it without a word. It looked too big on her. Sleeves past her wrists, collar grazing her chin. She didn't try to adjust it. I've been getting rid of things, she said suddenly. Wedding stuff, registry items. Anything that had his name on it. I nodded. But some things are trickier. Gifts from mutual friends. A book he never read, but I did. A candle I actually liked. She paused. It's hard to know where the line is, what's mine, what's memory, what's just habit. Maybe it's not about the object, I said. Maybe it's about who you were when you got it. She looked at me like that thought had landed somewhere she didn't expect. When we reached her building, the rain was lighter, but still steady. I parked, ready to say goodbye, but she lingered. Want to come up? She asked. Just for tea or something warm? Sure. Inside, her apartment had changed again. Less curated, more lived in. A few boxes by the door, new pillows on the couch. The banner was gone for good. She made tea while I sat on the rug. We didn't talk much. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was deliberate, chosen. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door, then hesitated. You left your umbrella in my trunk, I said. Her brow furrowed. I didn't bring one. I opened the trunk later that night, and there it was. A small black umbrella I didn't remember buying. Maybe it was hers, maybe not. Either way, I left it there, just in case she needed it again. I found her at the edge of the park, sitting on a worn wooden bench, eating a sandwich from a paper bag like it was the first real meal she'd had in days. I hadn't planned to see her, but I kept the habit of walking that route, mostly out of instinct. She looked up when I approached, surprised, not startled, a genuine reaction, not guarded. I come here sometimes, she said, shifting to make space beside her. It's quiet, and people are too busy with their own lives to stare. I sat next to her. The air was crisp, the kind that carries the first breath of fall. She handed me the second half of her sandwich without asking. I took it. We didn't talk much at first. The silence between us had become something else, familiar, even restful. I watched the way she traced patterns with her shoe on the gravel, the way she chewed slower than most people I knew. Everything about her moved with caution, like someone always waiting for the ground to shift beneath her feet. After a while, she said, I used to imagine the life I was walking into. Not the man, not the house, just the rhythm. Waking up beside someone. Grocery lists. A second toothbrush by the sink. And now I'm learning to imagine something that doesn't require someone else to validate it. She looked at me then, the kind of look that doesn't ask for approval, but still hopes not to be dismissed. I didn't offer a lesson or a comfort. I just nodded and she returned to her sandwich. Across the path, a dog chased a pigeon with absolute sincerity and no success. Chloe laughed, really laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so free of calculation, that I turned toward her before I could stop myself. What? She asked, still smiling. Nothing. Just, I don't think I've heard you laugh like that before. She paused, thoughtful. I don't think I have either, not in a while. It wasn't a moment that asked to be marked. No shift in music, no swelling emotion. Just two people, sharing a sandwich on a park bench, watching a dog lose a battle with gravity. Later, As we walked back toward the street, she said, "I don't want you to feel responsible for me. I don't. But you show up like someone who does. I show up because I want to." She looked down, pulling the sleeves of her sweater over her hands. "That's scarier than someone showing up out of duty." "I know." She didn't say anything for a few steps. Then, quietly, "What if I start needing you around? Then I'll still be here." She didn't respond, but her hand brushed against mine as we walked, and she didn't pull away. It was barely a gesture. It didn't ask for anything. It just said, "I see you, and maybe I'm not afraid of that anymore." She hesitated when I asked, not out of fear, but calculation, as if weighing whether stepping into that world again, even briefly, would take more than it gave. It wasn't a date. I hadn't called it that. Just an evening at a small community center where my sister was hosting a charity event. Quiet, local, no photographers, no expectations, just music, soft lights, and a room full of people who didn't know her name. She said yes the day before, in a message with no punctuation. I read it twice, unsure if it was confirmation or concession. Either way, I picked her up just after 7. She wore something simple, not black. Not anything that tried too hard to be the opposite of a wedding dress. Just a soft, deep green like moss under rain. When she got in the car, she didn't speak for a moment. Then, "You look nice." "So do you." At the venue, the crowd was easy, friendly. We kept to the edges at first. She stood beside me with a stillness that looked like composure, but felt like retreat. I didn't press. I pointed out the paintings on auction. Let her breathe. Then the music changed. A slow, familiar waltz began, soft strings, understated rhythm. She stiffened almost imperceptibly. "That was supposed to be our first dance," she said, her voice low. I looked at her, not asking, not urging. "I spent weeks choosing it," she added. "It wasn't for him, it was mine. I wanted to feel something." I didn't say anything, just offered my hand. She stared at it, not dramatically, not as if it were some grand gesture. Just a simple offer between one beat and the next. "I don't dance with ghosts," she said, half smiling. "I'm not a ghost." That made her laugh quietly, and then, finally, she placed her hand in mine. We moved slowly, not perfectly. She didn't lean in, didn't close her eyes, but she didn't pull away either. Her hand stayed light on my shoulder, her steps cautious. There were no dips, no twirls. Just motion, quiet and measured, like remembering how to trust the floor beneath her feet. "I feel ridiculous," she whispered. "You look calm." "I'm not. I know." And still, we danced. No one stared. No one interrupted. The song ended, and we stepped apart as easily as we'd come together. She didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything at all. Later, as we stood near the coat rack, she touched my arm. "I didn't think I'd be able to do that." "You did." She nodded, then looked around the room. "I used to imagine moments like that. Not this exactly, but something close. I thought if it ever came, it would be dramatic. Tears, closure, something big. Sometimes quiet things matter more." She looked at me. "Steady now. Did you choose that song?" "No." Still felt like a choice. We stepped into the night. The air was cold. She didn't ask me to stay. I didn't need to. The silence between us held something new, earned, not assumed. She turned to me before getting in the car. "I'm not ready for more." I didn't ask for more, but I wanted to tell you anyway. I nodded. That was the night I realized we weren't dancing around anything anymore. We were just learning the steps. She called just after 10. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, like someone entering a room they weren't sure they'd been invited into. "I think I left my keys in your jacket," she said. "The one I borrowed after the dance." I reached into the coat hanging by my door and, sure enough, there they were. Small, silver, with a blue plastic tag that had her handwriting on it. Storage. No apartment number. No name. Just that one word. "I can drop them off," I said. She hesitated. "I'd come get them, but I wasn't sure if it was too late." "It's not." She was quiet for a moment. "Then maybe I'll just come by." I didn't tidy the place. Didn't light candles or clear surfaces or make any effort to make it look like anything other than what it was, a lived-in space with books piled unevenly and a coffee mug still on the table. When she arrived, she was wearing the same coat from earlier, hair pulled back, face bare. No performance, no shield. I handed her the keys without ceremony. She took them, looked at them like they were heavier than they should be. "Sorry," she said. "I'm usually more careful." "It's fine. They're safe now." She didn't leave right away, just stood in the doorway, holding the keys like they might turn into something else. "Do you want tea or something?" I asked. She looked past me, into the apartment, then back at me. "Only if you weren't offering out of politeness." "I wasn't." She stepped inside. She moved differently here. Not cautious exactly, but aware, like she understood the significance of walking into someone else's life, even for a moment. I poured tea. We didn't talk about anything important at first, just the usual, the weather, a book she was pretending to read, the movie I hadn't finished. Then something shifted. "I didn't want to go home right away," she said. "You didn't have to explain." "I know. But I wanted to." She curled her hands around the mug, letting the warmth soak in. "It's strange and how some places feel safer than others, even if nothing's ever happened there. Just potential, maybe." I nodded. "Or the absence of pressure." She looked at me then. "For a long time, you never ask for anything." "I don't want anything you don't want to give." She blinked, slowly. "That's rare. I'm not in a hurry." She set the mug down. "But you're here. Steady. Like a lamp someone forgot they left on sea and when they come back it's just quietly waiting." "I can be that," I said. She stood, walked to the window, arms crossed lightly over her chest. "I didn't think I'd be here, in someone else's apartment, talking like this, feeling not afraid. You don't owe anyone a map for how you got here." She turned around, the streetlight casting a faint outline across her face. "What if I don't know where this is going?" "Then we find out together or not, but you're not alone." She took a breath, then walked over and picked up her keys again. She looked down at them, then at me. "I'll probably forget something else next time," she said, a hint of a smile. "Then I'll keep a drawer empty, just in case." She called me on a Thursday, not late, not early. Just one of those in-between hours when the day hasn't decided what kind of ending it wants. Her voice sounded clearer, not lighter exactly, but steadier, like someone who'd stopped bracing for bad news. "Do you have time to meet?" she asked. "I do." She didn't say where, just sent an address in a part of town I didn't recognize until I got there. A small storefront, empty, its windows dusty, but not broken. A faded sign above the door read, "Juniper Books." The door was unlocked. Inside, she was standing in the center of the room, arms folded, her back straight but not tense. She turned when she heard the door, and I noticed the keychain in her hand, the same one I'd returned not long ago. "I used to come here all the time," she said. "It closed a few years ago. I thought it was gone for good. What brought you back?" "I don't know," she said. "Maybe I just wanted to see if the place was still standing." "And is it?" "For now." I looked around. The shelves were mostly bare. Dust coated the corners, but it didn't feel abandoned, just paused. She walked slowly toward one of the windows and looked out. "I got a call yesterday. One of my old professors is retiring. He offered me a part-time position, helping organize the archives. Nothing glamorous, just quiet work. Books, notes, names that no one's spoken aloud in decades. That sounds like something you'd be good at." "I think I would too." She turned back to me. "But I said no." I didn't respond. I waited. She smiled, a little nervously. "I said no because I realized I didn't want to go backward. I want something that's mine, something I choose, not something that feels safe because someone else decided it for me." I stepped closer, careful not to interpret the moment too soon. "I asked about this building," she continued. "The lease is reasonable, needs repairs, permits, work I don't fully understand yet. But I could turn it into something, a place for stories, for people who don't want to be fixed but still want to belong somewhere." Her voice shook slightly, not from fear but from conviction trying to find its footing. "Do you think that's foolish?" she asked. "No," I said. "I think it's the bravest thing you've said since the altar." She exhaled slowly, as if she hadn't realized she was holding her breath. "I wanted you to be the first to know," she said. Because I've been saying yes to everyone else's life for so long, and this is my first real no and my first real yes to this place, to myself. I nodded. She walked back toward me, the key still in her hand. You don't have to be part of it, she said. This isn't about you. It's something I need to prove to myself. I know. But if you wanted to help carry a few boxes sometime, I wouldn't say no. I smiled. Then I'll be there. She looked around the room once more, then at me. I think I'm starting to feel like a person again. You were always one, I said. Now you're just finally choosing what kind. And in that dusty, half-forgotten space, she nodded. Not for me, not for permission, but for herself. It was raining again, but neither of us rushed. We met at the lake this time, her suggestion, the same place where everything had quietly come undone, though I never reminded her of that. I knew she hadn't forgotten. She remembered with the way she moved. More grounded now, more aware of her own weight in the world. There was a bench beneath a crooked tree that had somehow survived every storm, and she was already sitting there when I arrived. She didn't speak right away. I didn't either. Some silences you don't break. Some silences are the answer. Eventually, she said, "You know, I replayed that day in my mind for weeks. Not because of him, not even because of the guests, but because of what I said." I waited. I kept wondering why I said it to you. Why that sentence came out of my mouth like it already knew who it was meant for. You didn't know me. I didn't need to, she said. I just needed someone who wouldn't look away. The wind was light but cold. I offered her my scarf without speaking. She took it this time without hesitation, a small, ordinary moment, but hers. I was thinking, she said, that if you hadn't stayed, I would have collapsed the second the doors closed behind me. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way people do when they've run out of versions of themselves. I stayed because you asked. She turned toward me. Would you have stayed even if I hadn't? I met her eyes. Yes. She nodded slowly, like something had just settled inside her. That's the part I keep circling back to. The rain began to soften into mist, and for a long while we said nothing. She leaned back against the bench, not toward me, not away, just beside. The closeness didn't demand anything, it simply was. I don't know where I'm going, she said. You're already going. I don't know what we are. We don't have to name it yet. She was quiet again. Then, almost like a confession, but I want you here. I am. And tomorrow? I will be. She exhaled, slowly, and for the first time, she reached for my hand, not cautiously, not by accident. She took it like she meant to, like it was her decision. I'm not promising anything, she said. I don't have much to offer right now. I'm not asking for anything. Just this. She looked out over the lake, the sky reflected in muted silver across the surface. Then stay with me. I didn't answer with words. I just stayed.